Imagine this. You wake up early because you want to have a productive day. When the alarm goes off, you hit snooze several times. The excitement from last night is long gone, and the blanket makes you feel like a concrete slab. The next day seems like an enemy to avoid rather than a task to meet. The cursor blinks on your desk, and your list of things to do looks back at you. You know you should work, but you can't get yourself to do it. You tell yourself you'll get to work soon after lunch, but by the afternoon, you're lost in other things and running after unimportant tasks, while the big ones loom large and unfinished. The day is over, and the weight of what you didn't get done starts to sink in. As you lay your head down, you feel the pain of regret at not having lived up to the potential you know you have. Just one more day. The Stoics found a way to solve this problem, and anyone can do it. If your willpower has been challenged in this way, know this: you're not lazy. The trouble isn't putting things off. There's nothing strange about you. The issue is not just a lack of motivation. It's a specific kind of motivation that you lack, which we will talk about in a moment. We'll also talk about some scientifically proven ways to keep yourself motivated to do even the hardest, most time-consuming work. The first thing you need to do is improve your power source. There are two main types of motivating power, and one works much better than the other. The problem is that most of us have to depend on the weaker tone. External incentive comes from things like money, fame, and praise. Whenever your power comes from outside sources, you act because you want a reward. The extrinsic fuel works, but it wears out. This is because, for the brain, waiting is more satisfying than getting something. Dopamine rises when we're looking forward to something and falls when it happens. It makes us more focused and motivated. Extrinsic benefits are like fossil fuels in this case. They come from outside sources, give you a short-term boost, and sadly, they run out eventually. On the other hand, intrinsic drive comes from inside. It's made up of things like skill, interest, and a sense of mission. If you act because you want to, you will win whether you get something from the outside or not. The song is something you listen to enjoy, not to get it over with. So, think of innate drive more like fusion energy, which is what most stars use to power their lives. It can keep going on its own, lasts a long time, and works very well. It works better than external fuel and builds up over time. In a downward cycle of skill development and access to flow state, that perfect state of awareness where we lose ourselves in our work, it makes hard work easy. Intrinsic drive is what keeps you going, not inspiration from outside sources. To get off the ground, a rocket needs an extra booster engine. But once it reaches escape velocity, the booster falls off, and the rocket can fly on its main engines. In the words of Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. This Stoic wisdom underscores the power of intrinsic motivation and the importance of focusing on our internal strengths and responses rather than external rewards or recognition. How do you make your power source better? The first thing that it does is look at the 5 innate motivators: mastery, liberty, wonder, and autotelic purpose. I will show you how to turn up each of these natural motivators so that you are deeply motivated and can't stop. Now, I first felt the deep pain of not being intrinsically motivated. I wanted to study in my 20s and reach the best states of awareness while I was in school. And for the first few years on this road, I had a huge, unquenchable drive. But things started to change over time. My drive began to wane wildly. I was pretty motivated some days, but most of the time, the days felt like they would never end. I scratched my head and thought, what the hell is going on? The Stoics, understanding the importance of internal motivators, emphasized curiosity as a fundamental one. To be curious about your work is to want to learn as much as you can about it. Without it, your work is done when you leave the office. It makes work fun, like a book you can't put down. Now let's talk about meaning, which is the next innate driver. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, once said, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." This resonated with me, as I realized that if you don't have a reason for living, you're in the rat race, giving up your life for a job at a nameless company that only exists to make money. When you have a goal, you're ready to give up things to do work that you care about. And this hit home for me so deeply. When I was in school, I felt like I had a very high purpose. When I was studying, I was really interested because I thought that if we could learn more about awareness, we could make life better for a lot of people on Earth. However, I kept reading about the other internal motivators. At this point, I was confused as to why my drive was low when my interest and sense of purpose were both high. The Stoics would argue that aligning one's inner drive with a broader purpose, beyond just personal gain or external rewards, is key to maintaining sustained motivation and harmony with oneself and the world. The next one was getting better. Mastery means striving for greatness and always getting better. You only do what you need to do to get the job done without this drive. It makes you like an artist who keeps practicing after the show is over. So I stopped and thought, wait a minute, my mastery drive is low. I won't be able to keep getting better at the things I have to do for school. I thought, maybe this is why my drive is low, as I read about the mastery driver. Then I learned about autotelicity, the fourth innate motivation. This is the love of the things you do at work. Autotelicity comes from Greek words that mean self-purpose. It means doing things that are rewarding in and of themselves, not because you want something else to happen. When you use it, you'll feel like one of those coders you see in movies who can't stop writing because they love it so much. Like an attorney who can't stand the work that they have to do, you can't do it without it. That was me with school. It was boring for me to plan studies and sort through files full of data from people who took part. I learned that the things I did every day, hour after hour, I hated. Even though I loved the subject I was learning, my interest drive was high, and saw a lot of purpose in it. My purpose drive was high. You can love the idea of a field, but you can't love the work that goes into it every hour. So, my autotelicity was also low, and it was now clear why my drive was going away. Finally, the fifth innate motivation I read about is liberty. This is the feeling that you are in charge of your work's when, how, and what. You feel stuck and like someone else is controlling your life without it. You decide what job to work on, how to work on it, and what time of day to work on it. You really did your own work. And for me, liberty was pretty much non-existent in academics. I felt like I wasn't able to make my own decisions, which limited two of my 5 innate motivators: curiosity and meaning. I felt like I was stuck on an academic hamster wheel. Being clear on this was very helpful because it let me find a new activity that had the same amount of interest and purpose, but also a lot of liberty, control, and autotelicity. This approach helped me figure out that going from study to business was a big change for me. The study of awareness, Stoicism, and flow state is at the heart of what we do, which kept my interest and sense of purpose strong. But control, autotelicity, and liberty all went through the roof when I changed careers. As Seneca, a Stoic philosopher, aptly said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." This Stoic insight aligns perfectly with the pursuit of mastery, autotelicity, and liberty, emphasizing the importance of finding fulfillment in the present moment and the process itself, rather than being overly fixated on future outcomes or external rewards. I was reading books, learning how to use numbers for money, and finding out how to get people to join skill development. And the level of skill I could reach in business was unlimited, and any change I made the business better right away. I loved the crazy pace of a startup, the freedom it gave me to be creative, and seeing the clear results of my hard work, which fueled my autotelic drive. As we built the business, I was in charge of when I worked, what I worked on, how I did it, and how I planned the whole thing. I didn't have to follow any school rules. I was free to do what I wanted. And in this job, my interest in studying the best mental states took on a new form. It was a place where my curiosity, mastery, autotelicity, purpose, and liberty were finally in sync and at their highest level. Now, let's talk about why these factors are so strong. First, having high amounts of each produces neurochemicals that improve performance, such as adrenaline, dopamine, and acetylcholine. These chemicals also lower brain load. Focus and flow state are both improved by these two processes. Flow state is the best mental state for us, where we feel and perform at our best. Also, when you're in flow, your brain releases more chemicals, such as hormones, serotonin, anandamide, and even oxytocin in group flow states. They fill up the mind. This is crazy. The things that drive you on a deep level put you in flow. Yes, they do. Flow, on the other hand, makes your natural drive stronger. In other words, a good loop can start. The more driven you are, the more flow you feel. Of course, since flow is where natural motivation lives, it makes you even more motivated, which leads to more flow, and so on. Being in the vice grip of this positive loop, where intrinsic motivation feeds flow and flow feeds intrinsic motivation, makes you drive like crazy. This is why business leaders like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can stay very motivated for decades at a time. But this happens in every field. Einstein was always interested in new things, which led to important findings like the theory of relativity. Marie Curie's interest and drive led to groundbreaking work on radioactivity and 2 Nobel Prizes. Van Gogh's autotelicity led to famous and recognizable works of art. And players like Michael Jordan and Serena Williams were driven by skill and independence. Williams won 23 Grand Slam titles and Jordan won 6 NBA titles. As Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This Stoic wisdom reflects in these stories of success, where a harmonious blend of mastery, autotelicity, purpose, and liberty are directed by thoughtful, purposeful action, resulting in a fulfilling and effective pursuit of one's goals. What do all of these top workers have in common? Well, their intrinsic motivators are always locked in and at full power. Intrinsic motivation feeds flow, and flow feeds intrinsic motivation. Decade after decade, the circle builds on itself, making their drive go up and up and up over time. So, let's take a closer look at these 5 internal motivators and break them down a bit more so that you can start to think about how you can use each one in your professional life to get unbeatable inspiration. What you explore out of curiosity. You've probably had times when you were meant to do something else, but couldn't stop thinking about that interesting subject. Your interest will lead you wherever your mind goes. When you're curious, you don't just want to know, you need to know. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is known as the godfather of flow, said that the idea of flow itself came about out of pure interest. It was the result of pure study that was driven only by the desire to figure out an interesting puzzle about how people act. From a biological point of view, curiosity turns on the brain's reward system and releases dopamine, which makes learning more fun and helps you pay attention. Mastery is what you get better at. This is the skill of always getting better at what you do. For people who are really into sports, one thing that probably drew them in was the desire to do better today than yesterday. Now that's skill. Have you ever watched that super great talk again just to get better at it? Or spent an evening writing in a book, listing the pros and cons of a recent project? It's not enough to just remember the win. You also need to know how to improve for the next game. Mastery, then, is about getting better at something, and it creates dopamine and serotonin, which are chemicals that show growth. A feedback loop set up by these chemicals makes it easier to concentrate. As our skills get better, we look for bigger tasks, which keeps us growing and interested. This has to do with the balance between difficulty and skill, which sets off flow state. Flow is the highest level of innate drive. Autotelicity is the third natural driver. What you like. You know how it feels to work late because you want to, not because you have to. Autotelicity means that it gets harder to tell the difference between work and play. Flow state is also based on autotelicity. In fact, Csikszentmihalyi noticed that in the original study from the 1970s, flow was used instead of autotelic experience or activity. When people with high autotelicity are in the flow state, they act like what they're doing is the most important thing in the world. What you affect is your purpose. Purpose takes autotelicity and uses it to a goal, or because that is bigger than yourself. The idea that the work you do, even if it's something that's not directly related to you, is part of something bigger and more important than yourself. There have probably been times when you were good at your job and even loved it, but something was missing. You were in a situation where you wondered if any of it was important. Your job is just a list of chores if you don't have a reason for doing it. Finding value in a goal makes you more determined to keep going even when things get hard. It turns your job into a goal instead of just a way to make money. Boosting your amounts of oxytocin and serotonin, two chemicals that are important for social bonds, mood stability, and long-term health, makes you feel good. You choose autonomy, which is the last natural motivation. When you feel like you own something, you say, "This is mine." Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher, would assert, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This Stoic insight emphasizes the importance of internal motivators and their power to shape our responses and guide our actions. Intrinsic motivators like curiosity, mastery, autotelicity, purpose, and autonomy are crucial because they originate from within us, aligning with the Stoic principle of focusing on what we can control, our reactions, our thoughts, and our motivations. Remember how free it felt to work on a project without someone watching over your shoulder and controlling or even influencing every step. Think about the side project you worked on at work that didn't have any hard rules, just a goal. You could plan it, give tasks to other people, and choose the way to do things. Suddenly, work felt like play. That's freedom then. Being involved gives you the freedom to follow your interests, autotelic activities, and sense of purpose, all of which sharpen your focus and make you feel better. Being able to choose what to do makes our brains work better. Let's look at how to get the most out of each of your core drivers so you can use this power. To begin, you should figure out what drives you on a personal level. Figure out where you stand with each of your natural motivators right now. Think about how many of these 5 natural motivators are built into your work and how much they are used. Let us look at each driver one by one. Are you interested? How many times in the last 30 days did you want to read, watch, or listen to something connected to your job when you weren't working? You need 2 things to get your interest level up if it's low or if you know it could be higher. First, use what you've learned. This means that the things you learn help you do your job better. As soon as you learn something new and put it into practice, you can see real, good effects. The second thing is getting input right away from learning, which starts the flow state. This means seeing the direct results of what you've learned, if possible, in real time. I didn't read about study design when I was in school because it wouldn't have made a difference. It wouldn't have helped me get better, and it wouldn't have sped up my progress either. When I turned to business, on the other hand, I read 5 business books a week. This is because everything I learned, every model I had, and every idea I had led to real business breakthroughs that day, often hours after reading, which made me even more curious. For interest to be a strong motivation, you need to learn something and use it at work, in a way that makes sense. There needs to be a clear link between the learning, the cause, and the result. If this isn't happening right now, you should change something about your job so that putting effort into learning gives you the most instant feedback or good effect and growth. Next up is mastery. Think back over the last month. How much did you want to keep getting better at the skills you need for your job? And how much will that affect your ability to do well at it? Here's how to turn the mastery drive button all the way up. Write down all the skills and sub-skills that will help you reach your long-term work goals once you learn them. And then learn and practice those skills in a way that makes sense, like a professional artist or athlete. In other words, practice the skill just outside of your comfort zone and keep fixing your mistakes until the new behavior becomes automatic in your brain and body. And if you can't get better at the skills you use at work, you might need to think about changing careers and finding something that has endless opportunities for mastery built right in. Now, audacity. How often in the last 30 days did you jump right into one of the most important parts of your job without being told to or being pushed by regular work hours or meetings? You just deciding, I kind of feel like doing this now. Another way to test your audacity is to ask yourself how often you've found yourself wanting to do one of the most important things at work when you weren't doing it. I wasn't really interested in the day-to-day study tasks I had to do in school, but because I was a business, I kept working, both during and after work hours, to learn how to handle and lead people and do sales and marketing. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, teaches us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. This Stoic wisdom aligns with the concept of audacity and mastery, suggesting that the best way to overcome challenges or limitations imposed by external factors is to focus on self-improvement and personal action. It encourages us to take ownership of our journey, pursuing our interests and skills with dedication and a sense of personal responsibility, untethered by external expectations or constraints. Don't just think about what you like to do. This is an easy but odd way to boost your boldness. Think about an easier question instead. What am I good at? You're usually much better at some things than others. Because of your natural skills, some things feel less like work and more like play for you. Besides, it's easier to make a living doing things you are really good at than things you enjoy. For instance, if all you like to do is play computer games, that might not be the best way to make a living. So, the important thing is to believe that if you do things you're good at, you will get better at them over time. That's because studies have shown that skills can lead to flow. What's more, the longer you do something while you're in flow, the more you love it. Here it is, purpose, the next one. So, let's start with a gut check. A simple question to ask yourself is whether the organization you work for or the work you do has a clear goal. A second question is whether that is a goal I can support and feel good about putting all my time into. If so, that's a good place to begin. If not, you might need to change careers if you're stuck in a job or company that doesn't fit with your values or offer anything important to you. But if you can find even a small bit of meaning in the work you're doing now, here's how to make it stronger. Positive psychology study shows that having a clear purpose and knowing how your work fits with that purpose makes you more motivated and happier at work. So, start by putting your life's purpose into a single, clear line. Give it a name, like Advanced Technological Innovation for Global Good. Then, every day, write down next to each job what it has to do with your purpose. Finally, there's autonomy. Think about how much the how, what, why, or when of your work felt like something you could control and choose over the last 30 days. Could you choose whether to work on Project A or Project B, or whether to start your day early in the morning or late in the afternoon? Could you do it your own way without being watched or micromanaged? Now, there are two ways to make yourself more independent. It can be seen one way or taken literally the other. Right now, I want you to zoom out and change the setting of your work to one that you own and have chosen. In other words, the kind of bad job or role you may have right now should be seen as an important step in a bigger plan for your life, a plan you are making and choosing. Because even if what you're doing now gives you little freedom, putting it in the context of a bigger journey that you're planning and directing will give you more freedom in the present by turning it into a step toward bigger stairs that you've made. There is more freedom in a job with low authority, like being a junior salesperson, because all of a sudden you're getting the skills you need to start your own business in 3 years, or whatever your life journey is. Now, another strange way to boost autonomy is through usable autonomy, or FU autonomy. You may have heard of FU money, and this works the same way. Learn FU, make FU connections, and learn FU things. This will give you a background of choice, a background of optionality that lets you explore other options at any time and do well as a result. This freedom lets you stop what you're doing and use it whenever and wherever you want. If you feel like you don't have enough freedom at work, this takes the edge off, because you know you can always bounce back and get something just as good or better. And the best part is that you don't need to be independent to boost this at work. You don't need to be independent for most of your work, but you do need to be independent for a small part of it. So focus on the smallest part of your job that you can completely take charge of. And when you're not at work, do something you own for an afternoon every week. That's really all the freedom you need, and you can get that much freedom. As Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, insightfully stated, "Only the educated are free." This Stoic principle reinforces the idea that true autonomy and boldness come from understanding and developing our strengths, aligning our work with our purpose, and actively seeking knowledge and connections that empower us to make choices. It suggests that freedom is not just about external conditions, but also about internal knowledge and self-awareness, enabling us to navigate our professional paths with confidence and self-determination. Start with the internal motivation that is the weakest, and then boost it. Getting one motivator up can give you the drive to get the others up too. Each innate motivation has a value between 1 and 10. The goal is to increase each one by 5 points every year until you reach 50, which is the highest point for all 5 of them. After that, you want to keep up that level. You should know, though, that these won't always be equal. You'll always be adding to your motivated stack based on what your job needs or the normal ups and downs and changes that happen at work. It's also easier to figure out why your drive goes up or down when you switch from getting it from outside sources to getting it from within. Sometimes I want to stay in bed all morning for several days in a row, and I know that something is wrong with my internal motivating stack, because I'm excited to do work every day when my goals are in sync, even when I'm sick, sad, or life is otherwise chaotic. It will get easier over time to tune in to each of these 5 internal motivators, just like it gets easier to feel your own heartbeat. Whenever you improve your power source in this way, you get so excited about the next day that you feel like a child on Christmas Eve. and it gets so easy to work hard that it's like playing video games. It is possible to work hard on solving hard tasks for hours on end without consciously putting in any effort. In addition, extrinsic motivation goes down as inner motivation goes up, which is a good thing. That's when the magic happens, because inspiration that comes from outside sources can make you dependent on meaningless measures of success, outside benefits, or the fear of failing. It's easy for you to feel like you never have enough. Extrinsic drive makes the path to success a never-ending grind. Each accomplishment is like a short-lived high that is quickly replaced by a new need or fear. But once your own drive takes over, no one can touch you. You start to feel less dependent on outside factors for happiness and pleasure. This means you are less likely to be swayed by benefits from outside sources or to act and make choices based on things like money, fame, and punishment. You can think of this in terms of developing a Zen warrior-like trait, where you have the calmness of a monk and the will to fight like a warrior. You don't care about money, status, or fame in the outside world. Instead, you're focused on the work itself and don't let what other people think or expect of you affect you. And this is a beautiful, stable state of mind where all you want is to be in flow and doing the work. This is autotelic drive, according to Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who is known as the godfather of flow. This is because the main goal is the experience itself, not any benefit or prize that might come in the future. Being in this state of self-containment makes you less vulnerable to the kinds of pain that ruin so many lives. The fighters, who are driven by their own desires and act like monks, seek power over money, purpose over position, boldness over praise, interest over conformity, and freedom over approval. You'll be able to get into flow state a lot more often as your natural drive goes up, but you also need to know how to master the flow cycle in order to enter and leave flow every day without getting burned out. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic philosopher, reminds us, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This Stoic wisdom aligns perfectly with the concept of focusing on internal motivators. It teaches us that true strength and motivation come from within, not from external achievements or recognition. By cultivating internal motivators like curiosity, mastery, autotelicity, purpose, and autonomy, we gain control over our minds and lives, becoming impervious to external pressures and finding joy and fulfillment in our daily pursuits. To begin, you must understand how important the flow cycle is. Flow is like a circle with different stages. 1. Struggle. In this stage, you're just starting to deal with a difficult job. It may be annoying, but it's an important part of the process. 2. Let go. Once the fight is over, you need to take a break and let go. This lets your mind rest and get better. 3. Flow. During this time, you're fully focused on your work and everything seems to go smoothly. This is my favorite part of the cycle. 4. Recovery. It's important to give yourself time to rest after being in flow. This means taking some time to rest and heal so that the next stage can start. 5. Progress. In the last step, you'll think about your work and make progress. It's an important step toward progress and growth. To get good at the flow cycle, you need to know where you are in it and change how you do things to fit. Say, don't push yourself too hard when you're in the struggle phase. Instead, admit that things are hard and take a break if you need to. Enjoy the flow phase and keep your mind on the task at hand. You can also improve the flow cycle by making your workspace better. Set up a place where you can focus and get rid of as many distractions as possible. To stay interested, give yourself clear goals and tasks. Don't forget to plan breaks to keep from getting burned out. You can always be in the state of flow if you understand and learn the flow cycle. This will make your work more fun and effective. To sum up, innate motivation is a strong force that can push you to do your best at work. You can feel more flow and happiness in your daily tasks if you find and boost your innate motivators, such as wonder, mastery, boldness, purpose, and liberty. Keep in mind that these drivers might not always be equal, and you might need to shift your attention based on the current situation. Ultimately, developing your own drive can lead to a great and satisfying job where you enjoy your work. So, keep going on your journey to learn more about yourself and find inspiration. May your work give you the flow and satisfaction you're looking for.